At 95, I've lived through more seasons than I can count. I've watched the world change through wars and peace, through radio and internet, through telegrams and text messages. But through all that change, one thing remained constant in my life. I lived alone, not out of loneliness, not out of fear, but by choice. And what I've learned from those silent nights, those long mornings with only the ticking of a clock, and the sound of my own breath, are lessons no one really talks about. You might think living alone for that long would be sad. I'll be honest, it can be. But it's also the most honest, unfiltered way to meet yourself. And over the years, I've gathered more truths in silence than I ever did in a crowded room. These lessons aren't just for the old. They're for anyone who's ever feared solitude, anyone who's wondered if they're enough on their own. This is not a how-to guide. This is my story told from a quiet house that's seen nearly a century of life. Chapter 1. The decision to stay alone. People often assume I lived alone because I never married. But that's not true. I had love. Once, his name was Thomas. We met when I was 23, both of us still blinking into the light after the Second World War. He wanted a family. I wanted freedom. We tried for 3 years to make our paths run together, but in the end, I chose my own. It wasn't easy. Back then, being a woman alone raised eyebrows. My neighbors whispered. My mother cried. But I knew in my bones that I needed space to become myself. And that space could only be found in solitude. I bought a small cottage near the edge of town, a place with ivy on the walls and a garden that refused to behave. It became mine in a way no shared space ever could. Lesson 1. Choosing solitude doesn't mean rejecting love. It means choosing the right kind of love, starting with your own. Chapter 2. The power of quiet mornings. Most mornings, I woke with the sun. There's something sacred about the early hours when the world is still half asleep. I'd make my tea, sit on the porch, and listen to the birds gossip in the trees. No alarms, no one calling my name. Just breath and bird song. Over the decades, I noticed how that quiet gave me clarity. Problems that seemed big the night before shrank in the calm of dawn. I learned to be gentle with myself, to let the day come as it would. Lesson 2. Stillness isn't the absence of life. It's where life begins to make sense. Chapter 3. What loneliness actually feels like. Loneliness isn't loud. It's not crying in the dark or dramatic breakdowns. It's subtler than that. It's reaching for a second cup you'll never pour. It's laughing at something on TV and realizing no one else heard the joke. I won't pretend I never felt it. I did, especially during holidays or when I lost a friend. But I learned to treat loneliness like weather. It comes. It passes. It teaches you things you wouldn't learn in sunshine. Lesson 3. Loneliness doesn't break you. It introduces you to yourself. Chapter 4. The people who stay and the ones who fade. When you live a long life, you watch people come and go like seasons. Some friends last decades, others just a chapter or two. I used to chase people, afraid of losing connection. But I learned that not everyone is meant to stay. And that's okay. The ones who remained, they were like oak trees, steady, rooted. They didn't need daily updates to know I cared. We pick up where we left off, even after months. Lesson 4. Real connection isn't measured by proximity, but by presence. Chapter 5. The surprising freedom of aging. No one tells you this, but real aging comes with a kind of freedom you can't imagine when you're young. You stop caring what people think. You wear your softest clothes, eat breakfast for dinner, and speak your truth without apology. I danced in my kitchen in my 80s, sang off-key while cleaning the stove, and said no without guilt. Lesson 5. Getting older isn't about becoming less. It's about becoming more of who you really are. Chapter 6. My relationship with things. When you live alone for nearly 70 years, you collect things. Not just furniture or photographs, but rituals. I had a favorite chair that knew the curve of my back. A chip mug that held 1,000 morning thoughts. Curtains that faded with each passing season. Letting go of those things was hard. But it also taught me how little I need to feel full. Lesson 6. Your life isn't measured by what you own, but by what you treasure. Chapter 7. Health, habits, and holding on. I stayed mobile by walking every morning. I cooked for myself as long as I could. I did puzzles to keep my mind sharp. And when I couldn't do those things anymore, I found new rhythms. But here is the truth they don't tell you. Health isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. And in solitude, you learn to nourish all of it. Lesson 7. Caring for your body matters, but tending your spirit is what keeps you alive. Chapter 8. Conversations with the mirror. There's a special kind of conversation you have with your own reflection after decades alone. You learn to notice the sadness behind your eyes, the strength in your smile. You forgive yourself more easily. Some days I spoke aloud, asked myself hard questions, answered them honestly. Lesson 8. The most important voice you'll ever hear is your own. Make sure it's kind. Chapter 9. What I would tell my younger self, I'd tell her to take more pictures, to write down the funny things, to stop worrying about being chosen and start choosing herself. I'd tell her that solitude isn't failure. It's a path. And that path can lead to a life full of meaning. Lesson 9. You don't need permission to live fully, especially from yourself. Chapter 10. The final season now. At 95, I move slower. My days are quieter, but there's a fullness I can't describe. I look back not with regret, but with deep gratitude. I lived alone, but I was never truly alone. The wind through the trees, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of my breath, these were my companions. And as my final chapters unfold, I'm not afraid, because I've lived honestly, and I've learned that solitude, far from being empty, is a place where the soul comes home. Final lesson. A life well lived, I need one that followed every rule. It is one that stayed true to its own rhythm. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. I hope these reflections meet you where you are, whether in company or in quiet. And I hope they remind you that your life, however it unfolds, holds wisdom worth sharing. Because one day someone will need your story too.